Beneath the surface of our planet lies a realm untouched by sunlight, a place where pressure rises until it can crush steel, and the cold is so absolute it feels ancient. Down here, in the silent weight of the deep, the world above becomes a distant memory. Nothing stirs except the slow drift of silt and the quiet pulse of creatures built to survive the impossible. For decades, these depths remained out of reach, too hostile, too expensive, too unknown. But that is beginning to change. One nation is turning away from the edge, cutting research ships, closing programs, dimming the lights on its own understanding of the sea. Another is heading in the opposite direction. While the United States steps back, China is descending farther than ever before. Their vessels slip into the darkness with increasing frequency, each dive deeper, faster, more ambitious than the last. Fleets of autonomous machines map the seafloor in silence. New laboratories rise along the coast. Funding flows without hesitation. And still, the question grows heavier with every dive. What exactly is China finding down there? Little of it is discussed publicly. Even less is understood. Yet in the quiet beneath the waves, a shift is happening. One that could reshape far more than the world we see above. To understand what is unfolding, we first have to return to the beginning, to the very shape of the ocean itself. The Mariana Trench lies hidden in a remote stretch of the Western Pacific, a scar in Earth's crust so deep it seems impossible that life could exist there. But to reach its floor, you must first pass through every layer of the sea, each one stranger than the last. At the surface, light still rules. Warm currents drift over reefs and shoals, moving through a world we recognize, a world shaped by color and motion. Yet this familiar blue fades quickly. Slip below 200 meters, and the glow weakens until it thins into a dim, restless haze. This is the Twilight Zone, a place caught between day and night. Pressure rises sharply, shadows lengthen. Creatures stretch into shapes that feel exaggerated, unnatural. Long, ribbon bodies built to sense what little light remains. Drop lower, and even that faint glimmer disappears. The Midnight Zone swallows everything. Here, darkness is complete. Only the living bring light. Flecks of cold fire drifting in the current. Melts widen, eyes shrink or vanish. Bodies soften to withstand a weight now dozens of times greater than anything felt at the surface. Below 4,000 meters, you enter the abyss. The sea becomes silent, wide, and ancient. What little life persists clings to the drifting snow of the dead above. And then, deeper still, waits the Hadal Zone, the realm of trenches. A world of crushing blackness, where pressure climbs to extremes beyond imagination. Yet it is precisely this extreme that draws China downward. Because in a place this hostile, anything that survives, or anything that lies buried, could hold power no one fully understands. But to understand why China now dominates the ocean's deepest frontiers, we have to look not at what they discovered, but at the moment another nation stepped away. For decades, the United States led ocean science. Its research vessels crossed every major basin. Its agencies mapped seafloors, tracked currents, and set the global standard for exploration. But that era is fading. In recent years, NOAA, the backbone of American ocean research, has faced wave after wave of budget cuts. Expeditions once taken for granted are now postponed or canceled. Ships sit idle in port, engines silent. Projects stall midway. Entire research teams dissolve as funding dries up. In laboratories that once buzzed with discovery, lights flicker off long before sunset. And as America pulls back, another power moves decisively forward. Across the Pacific, China is accelerating. New marine institutes rise along the coastline. Scholarships funnel thousands of students into ocean robotics, deep-sea engineering, and marine geology. State-of-the-art submersibles roll out of shipyards with increasing speed. Fleets of autonomous vehicles stretch the country's reach farther and deeper than ever before. Each year, their capacity multiplies. This isn't coincidence, it's strategy. China sees the deep sea not as mystery, but as opportunity, one that must be taken before anyone else can. While the United States retreats into fiscal caution, China commits to long-term presence. While American vessels rust, China builds more. While budgets shrink in Washington, funding surges in Beijing. The balance of exploration is shifting, and beneath thousands of meters of pressure where sunlight has never touched, that shift is beginning to matter in ways the surface world has barely begun to understand. China's transformation in the deep did not begin with a grand revelation. It began with a single descent. In 2020, the manned submersible Fenduge slipped beneath the Pacific, descending into the crushing stillness of Challenger Deep. At nearly 11 kilometers down, only a handful of vessels in human history had ever touched this place. For China, that dive was a milestone. But more importantly, it was a signal, one that marked the end of their rare, ceremonial expeditions and the beginning of something far more relentless. After Fenduze, the pattern changed. Instead of sending one sub every decade, China began building machines designed not for glory, but for repetition. Smaller, lighter, cheaper. Some no larger than a shoebox. Autonomous craft engineered to glide through darkness with no cable, no pilot, and no margin for error. They crawled across the seabed on jointed limbs, or drifted like metal plankton through black water, returning with footage, samples, and maps that once required entire crews. One robot became three. Three became dozens. This is where China quietly leapt ahead. While traditional deep-sea expeditions rely on billion-dollar vessels and years of planning, China adopted a fleet mentality, deploying swarms of compact submersibles capable of diving again and again, each mission building on the last. What used to be a rare scientific event became routine, and with every descent, new data accumulated. Seafloor scans sharpened, chemical readings multiplied, biological samples revealed species no one had cataloged before. In deep-sea exploration, information is power, and power scales with frequency. China understood that earlier than anyone. Every dive reduces uncertainty. Every sample redraws a boundary. Every returning robot adds one more piece to a landscape the world has barely begun to see. And as the number of dives accelerates, so does the advantage. Because the nation that descends the most is the nation that discovers the most. And the nation that discovers the most becomes the one others must follow. Beneath the surface, dominance isn't declared, it's accumulated, one dive at a time. As China's dives multiplied, a new picture of the deep began to form. One hidden beneath thousands of meters of pressure, untouched by sunlight, and filled with things that could reshape the balance of global power. Down here, the ocean stops being just a frontier. It becomes a vault. The first clues appeared at the edges of cold seeps, patches of the seafloor where methane and hydrogen sulfide leak up from the Earth's crust. In total darkness, these chemicals feed entire ecosystems. Mussels, clams, and towering tube worms thrive without a single ray of sunlight, surviving on chemical energy instead of photosynthesis. It's life that defies everything we expect, living proof that biology adapts even in conditions that feel alien. For China, these places are more than biological curiosities. They are natural laboratories. Their extreme chemistry is a testbed for future energy technology, a window into how life might exist on other worlds, and a hint that the deep contains systems far more complex than the surface world ever imagined. But the real shock came when Chinese robots pushed beyond the seeps, into sediment that glittered with something far more valuable: methane hydrate. What looks like packed snow is actually a frozen lattice of ice holding methane gas under immense pressure. In some estimates, the energy locked inside these deposits exceeds the combined reserves of coal, oil, and natural gas on land. Trillions of dollars in potential fuel, all sitting on the seafloor like hidden reservoirs. Extracting it is dangerous. Disturb it too quickly and entire slopes can collapse, releasing methane into the ocean and atmosphere in a pulse large enough to disrupt climate systems. But the country that masters this extraction first would control an energy source capable of redefining the century ahead. And then there are the rocks. Scattered like pebbles across the mud, polymetallic nodules hold cobalt, nickel, copper, and manganese, everything needed to build batteries, electric vehicles, and renewable power grids. On land, these materials are scarce. Down here, they lie in silent fields stretching for miles. China knows exactly where they are. Because more dives mean more maps mean more resources, and more resources mean leverage in a world desperate for clean energy. In the 21st century, power is no longer measured only by what lies under the soil, but by what waits in the deep. Exploration is only the beginning. What China is building in the deep is something far more consequential, because once you can reach the seafloor again and again, the next logical step is to stay there. Right now, China is planning a permanent research base nearly 2,000 meters below the surface, an underwater outpost designed to house scientists for weeks at a time. Imagine a space station but anchored to the ocean floor, surrounded by darkness, pressure, and silence. A facility that never sleeps. A foothold in a world no other nation has learned to occupy. Long-term presence changes everything. It means constant monitoring, constant sampling, constant access. But it also means something else: control. Because the deeper you go, the more you find the hidden machinery of the modern world. Beneath the waves lie thousands of kilometers of fiber optic cables, thin glass threads carrying almost all global communication. They stretch across trenches and continental shelves like the nerves of a living organism. Emails, bank transfers, military signals, entire economies, all routed through lines no thicker than a garden hose. China has already revealed robots designed to repair these cables. Tools that can crawl along the seabed, clamp onto damaged segments, and splice fibers in pitch-black conditions. Officially, they exist to maintain infrastructure. But a robot that can fix a cable can also sever one. Quietly. Invisibly. Thousands of meters beyond the reach of surface patrols. In a world where information moves faster than ships or missiles, undersea cables are more than infrastructure. They are the nervous system of civilization. And whoever can reach them, touch them, or disable them holds leverage no satellite or warship can match. The deep sea is no longer just a frontier of science. It's becoming a battlefield of power. While China builds momentum in the deep, the United States is experiencing something very different. A quiet unraveling. One that rarely makes headlines but grows more visible with every canceled expedition and every scientist who walks away. Across American research institutions, the pattern is the same. Budgets shrink, grants disappear, promising projects freeze midstream. Laboratories that once led global ocean science now flicker with half-staffed teams and equipment waiting for funding that never comes. Some of the nation's top marine biologists and engineers have left entirely, not because their work is done, but because the money to continue simply no longer exists. Out at sea, the decline feels even heavier. Research vessels that once sailed the world now sit docked for months at a time. Steel hulls aging in silence, engines idle, crews disbanded. Many of these ships are decades old, with no replacements planned. Without them, America loses reach, loses presence, loses the ability to see what is happening beneath its own waters. And while the United States debates funding levels, drafts proposals, and postpones decisions, China adds another 1,000 meters of depth. Another fleet of robots. Another year of uninterrupted progress. In science, hesitation has a cost. In the deep sea, that cost compounds. Because the nation that pauses its exploration doesn't just fall behind, it forfeits the unknown to whoever keeps going. The deeper China goes, the more power they find. Not just minerals or methane, but influence. Quiet, growing, anchored to places most nations will never see. Down in the cold darkness, the future is taking shape, layer by layer, pressure by pressure, in a world too fragile to be disturbed twice. Because once these ecosystems break, they don't heal. Once the seafloor is scarred, the damage becomes part of the planet itself, and whoever reaches the bottom first won't just map the deep, they'll shape the terms of its survival. The deep sea is becoming the next frontier of global power, and if this is what China is finding at the bottom of Earth, what are they searching for on the moon? If you want to keep exploring the hidden battles shaping our world, subscribe and dive with us into the next mystery.